good evening, everybody. It is it's Tuesday evening. It's time for us to begin. I want to say good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this series of conversation that we hope will be inspirational, encouraging, informative, and all of the above. And we just appreciate each and every one of you for joining us tonight. My name is Brian Anthony Campbell. I'm the founder of Adimu Men of Excellence. Adimu is a young men's organization, and our mission is to develop a rare group of young men who exemplify respect, responsibility, brotherhood, and leadership. We've been around since March of 2000, and over 200 young men have made the commitment to strive for excellence throughout their lives. And so we are trying to do all we can to make a difference in the lives of the young men who are a part of our organization. And this is the first event that we've sponsored on this particular level because we're striving to develop men of excellence, and that's what we're all about. And so tonight we've come together in this virtual format to discuss issues related to men and manhood. And this session is called Man Up. This is a men's empowerment series. It's all about helping men, boys and men to reach their full potential. And so over the next few Tuesday nights, we're going to be coming together in this virtual format to have conversations about various issues related to men so we can help men to be all that they have been created to be. Again, I am Brian Anthony Campbell, the founder of the Adimu Men of Excellence, also senior minister of the 15th Street Church of Christ in Pompano Beach, Florida. And it's an honor for me to have each one of you here. Joining me tonight on our first panel, we have some outstanding men from our community. And our panels each week will have different guests and individuals who will be helping us to discuss the topic at hand. And so joining us tonight, we have Ruben Roberts. We appreciate him. Ruben is the founder and CEO of RER Consulting. And that is a professional development, evaluation, training, and management services firm. And they work closely with local governments to build stronger communities. And we also are pleased to have with us tonight Pierre Rutledge, who is a program director with the Miami-Dade Public Schools for 24 years. And as you can see, is a proud graduate of Florida A&M University, as we can see in that background there. Also tonight, joining us via phone, because he's actually just left work and he's on his way home, is Ashley Hepburn. He is the minister of the Magnolia Park Church of Christ in Magnolia Park, Florida, and he's going to be joining us tonight as well. And helping me tonight as my co-moderator is Samuel McCray, who you may have just saw his video popped on. He's actually on duty. I think he was just deputized tonight up in Tallahassee, Florida, as a member of the law enforcement. So we appreciate him for taking the time to help us out tonight. He is a 2004 graduate of Blanchard High School and Adimu Men of Excellence. So gentlemen, how are you guys doing tonight? You guys can unmute yourselves so we can go ahead and jump into this conversation tonight. How's everybody doing?
Doing well, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. How about you,
Ruben?
Brian?
Doing well. I'm honored to be here tonight.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you. And I know we got some individuals. I see the Adimu alumni are in the chat already chatting it up. Those are some of the young men who graduated from our organization over the years. And we're just happy to have our current members as well as our alumni members who are joining the conversation tonight. And those of you who are watching us on social media, we thank you for joining us on Facebook as well as YouTube. So we appreciate each and every one of you tonight for being a part of what we hope will be an inspiring and informative event. And so, gentlemen, like I said, this is pretty much going to be a conversation. We're going to talk for a few minutes, and I'm sure we'll be getting some questions from our audience tonight. And then perhaps by the end of the evening, maybe 15, 20 minutes, we'll spend some time with Q&A answering some of the questions that have been posed throughout the evening. And so I want to begin Before we started um, the conversation tonight, the three of us were talking about recent events that have occurred in Miami-Dade, with shootings and things of that nature. And we all agreed that something like this is so essential, it is needed, and it is necessary. And so I want to ask you, how would you describe the state of men and manhood today, specifically Black men? How would you describe the state of men and manhood today, especially for Black men?
I defer to Pierre. Go ahead,
Okay.
Pierre.
Brian, I think that's a great topic, and thanks, Ruben, for deferring to me. The way I look at it, when we were growing up, the village had the men in the village. For example, whether they were professional or not, they were in our neighborhood. They were part of our village. I think what has happened now, we've become complacent. And I say we because I'm not here to point fingers at anyone. I want to be part of the solution to the problem. But what I think we've depended on social media, the visualizations that they get on TV every day, and some of the things that we didn't even have access to. So therefore, we were forced to depend on the men in the neighborhood. A lot of our men are learning how to be men based upon what they see in media and social media and what they don't see in the home. Now, let me debunk the myth. Coming from a single parent home is nothing new. Okay? It's nothing new. But if you were in a single parent home, you had a coach at the boys club, you had a neighbor across the street, male figures who looked after you and made sure that you were okay. So I want to just take that off the table. If you come from a single parent home, yada, 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 the chances of you being successful in everyday life diminishes. I don't agree with that. I just think that the village band together when we were coming and took care of us.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing that now. We're dependent on everything else to, like I say, raise our men.
Mm.
I like to piggyback on what Pierre is saying. I mean, by the time I was 12, I knew how to change a tire. I knew how I pumped the gas for my mom. She never had to take any groceries out the car. There were certain things that were instilled in us as young kids, growing to be young men, that we needed to do. And it was something that was reinforced. If I went to work with any of my uncles and I got paid, my uncle would say, make sure you give your mama something. And that did a couple of things. One, it taught me to be responsible so that I can earn money to purchase what I wanted, right? And then the other thing was to honor and respect those who are taking care of you. Some of us have kids that we're still paying phone bills for, probably paying rent and doing all of that other stuff right now, and they may not always show gratitude, but part of being a man is also showing that gratitude. Yeah. And I was fortunate to have, very close relationship with my biological father. The mother and father divorced when I was young, and my mother married again, and my stepfather and I have a great relationship. So I had the blessings of having two positive men in my life. So one of the things that my father told me, and I think that one of the things that we need to really reinstate, my father told me at a very early age, he said, son, all you got is your word and your name. That's it. He said, I don't care how much money you have or don't have. Mm-hmm. He says, I can walk out of this door right now and I can have $1 million or I can have $0. And people will treat me the same because my name and my word means something. I think we got to get back to the days where that is happening, where younger men, women look up to older guys who are doing the right thing, look to seek information and knowledge from them and learn from them. Far too often, our youth are learning from folks who don't have the experience, don't have the knowledge, don't have the expertise, but they have their ear. And so sometimes a lot of our youth are misguided because they're getting the wrong information. So that's why tonight's program is so very important. I'm hoping that all who are on or watching, man, woman, child, grab someone or tell someone else about the program, and hopefully we can impart some words that will be meaningful to them tonight.
I definitely agree. Ashley, Brother Hepburn, I'm glad you could join us tonight. You made it home safely.
Yeah, 2-hour drive, but I made it home safely. I really appreciate you, Brother Campbell, for allowing me to be a participant on this panel. I have enjoyed the discussion so far. I think it's a vital and question that you bring up, the state of the Black man in our community today. The comments made by Pierre and both Ruben speak to the idea of a village experience. And we know from a biblical standpoint that was prevalent in the New Testament. As we look at Timothy, he was raised by his mother and his grandmother, and the Apostle Paul had a great impact in influencing Timothy as he was a minister of the gospel as well. So when we talk about the village experience, we're talking about more than just mama in the house. We're talking about more than grandmama in the house. We're talking about everybody that child is influenced by and impacted by in their development. But some of the things that we have to keep in mind, the results that we see as an outcome in our community are not about what just happened a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. A child's development really is encapsulated within the first 5 years of their life. And in that first 5 years, if that child does not get that love or that fundamental development, they're already on headed in the wrong direction. And so we have to do what I would say a better job of trying to identify those youth that are headed in the wrong direction and try to capture their attention by engaging them not only in church, not only in athletic events such as Pop Warner football and baseball and basketball, and having the right coaches to reach them and influence them. But we just got to do a better job in our community, because that's the only way we're going to change the trajectory of the way our community is going. Because we're being challenged even now, and so I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, gentlemen. One of the things, as we talk about the young men and becoming men and so on and so forth, one of the things we ask the members of ADEMA in terms of when they apply to become a part of the organization, they have to write an essay. And the essay is entitled "My Definition of a Real Man." And it's just interesting to hear the different perspectives from these boys about what their idea or concept is of a real man, because I truly believe there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about what it means to be a real man and about manhood. So if you were to respond to that question or that statement, what is your definition of a real man? Because I hear a lot of guys say, I'm a real this, that, or the other. But what is a real man?
I take that. My definition, as I said before, is a man that lives up to his word. What he says, he means. What he means, he says. A man that lives by his example. My Uncle Walter used to always say the little phrase, "I'd rather see your sermon than hear one any day." So let your life be your sermon. Let that be what people can relate to. I know the misnomer for most of us in our community is the black man is the man with some money, nice car, probably a couple of women or whatever, and that is what, the example has been. But being a man of your word, being a man of integrity, being someone that is dependable and someone that people can count on. If you can't deliver on something that you promised, first of all, don't make the promise. But if you can't deliver on something that you said you would do, let people know. Be straight up with folks. You have to walk that fine line in life. I want all, and this is for the youth. Listen, every last one of us on here have come to a fork in the road. All right. So we've had challenges where we've had to make decisions that will impact our lives for the rest of our lives. You follow me? And I'm saying this because I lived it and I understand. A lot of the guys that I hung out with when I was a teenager didn't end up where I ended up. They ended up in different places. Some of them not too good. But what was instilled in me as a young man, the integrity, being a man of your word, making sure that you deliver for whatever it is that you make a commitment on. And the other thing, my father would love this. Men don't gossip. That gossipy stuff ain't no real man. So if you're a man of integrity, you mind your own business. I'm gonna say this last phrase that my Uncle Walt used to say. It's called business. The best of business in the line of business is business of your own. If you have no business, then make it your business to leave other people's business alone. All right. So, I mean, those things, the integrity, being a man of your word, making sure that you live that life that you are preaching to others to live. Don't go out there and be a false prophet, if you will. Don't go out there and say the person they should do X, Y, and Z, and you're not following the same things that you are sharing with them. But that, and just keeping to yourself, being upright and honoring your commitments. That's what a man is, in my opinion.
That's a hard act to follow, but Brother Hepburn, I'll dive in there. There are 4 things that I look for in my definition of a man. One, who's a protector, right? We often say I'm the king of the castle. Well, that has to be by more than just word. It has to be in deed. You're someone that's a consoler. Most times men are taught not to cry. We're taught not to show real emotion. If you really want to get down to the soul of a young man, particularly someone who's troubled, is when you shake his hand firm. As we were taught, you look him square in the eye and say, man, I love you. And it's that's just how I feel. I love you and I want you to do the right thing. Also, you got to be a provider, okay? We always talk about, I'm the boss. Well, like I was taught growing up, it costs to be the boss. And then my last thing, you have to be wise. Not necessarily wise from a formal sense. You don't have to go to Florida A&M to get wisdom. You don't have to be a pastor of the church. You don't have to be the former president of the NAACP. But you have to have what my grandmother used to say all the time, a little mother's wit, common sense and wisdom. And what you say, you mean, and you accept nothing else. There's no 2 ways about it. Our young men are looking for strong men. We're not perfect. I never said they were looking for perfect men. They're looking for strong men who have a conviction about what they do and who are serious about protecting, providing for, consoling, and giving the village wisdom. That's a tough thing, man. If you find a kid, you can see they're hollow. You look them in the eye and they really don't have a grasp on what's going on. And you grab them and say, young man, if nobody's ever told you this, I want you to know that I love you. They just go like, woo. I mean, it's like an out-of-body experience. And when you're real, it makes an impact on a kid. They'll run through a wall for you, or they'll be so ashamed to not make you proud that they'll fall in line.
All right. So I guess I'm last again. That's all right. Good points made by Ruben and Pierre. I think what I add value to the discussion is just trying to give a biblical perspective. So when we look at manhood, you got to go back to Genesis. When you go back to Genesis, you see God created man first, and he gave man some responsibility. He gave man dominion over the earth. And so God's intent for man and manhood is to have dominion over whatever he is responsible for. Meaning dominion, you mean you subdue it or hold possession of it. And to do that, it requires hard work. Being in charge ain't easy. If you're in charge of your household, that means you have to not only be in charge by word of mouth, but you got to be actionable. You got to be the example. And leadership, people only follow you if you're doing what is right. And to do what's right means you have to be accountable. So if you're not doing right, it's going to reflect in your actionable activity and whether or not you're working hard to get there. It also requires that you are responsible for your actions. And that shows up in your integrity, as Ruben talked about. And I like what Ruben said about what his father and his uncle made as statements, because what that does is it reflects the honesty and the integrity that we as men have to possess, especially if we're talking about being examples for our youth. You think youth are smart enough to know somebody that has integrity and whether or not they're going to make a decision to follow them or not. Youth are not dumb. They're not stupid. They're very smart. And so if you don't have these qualities as a man, it's going to be difficult for you to achieve any level of success in your household, in your community, in your church, or whatever environment you're in. And when you possess these qualities, people will follow you. Not that we're looking for people to follow us, but we're looking to have influence. And if we have influence, we can then impact people's lives and help to push them in the right direction. And that comes with having integrity. It comes with being responsible. It comes with being accountable. It comes with being actionable. And it comes with a lot of hard work. Everybody on this panel didn't get where they got just by sitting on the corner. They got where they got by working hard.
And I always say that the equation for success is vision plus energy times grace equals success. If you have the vision and you're willing to put in the hard work, and God adds in that measure of grace, you can be successful whatever you set your mind to do. Gentlemen, one of the things that you all mentioned is, and I hear it a lot with Ruben and others, is that there were individuals in your lives, whether it was a father or uncle, there were male figures in your life that you were able to look to. And they help you to have some type of idea of what it means to be a man or what manhood is all about. What would you say to a single mother who's raising a boy as to what she might be able to do to help her son understand what it means to be a man and what manhood is all about?
And we'll let you go first.
That's all right. So what I would encourage that single mother in stating to her is that, hey, this is your child. This is your responsibility. You brought this child into this world, and you have, even though you're a mother, you still have the ability to raise that child and to cause that child to have good success. Good success simply means to put that child in the right position, to be in an opportunity to have success. Now, in order for that child, that male child, to then understand how to be a man, it requires him to have other men to be able to look at and emulate. So when you look at our culture in our environment, you see a lot of males in single mother households. How do they get their child to be raised in a good situation, even with a single mother? Well, it's been mentioned already. We've talked about that. It's about putting that child in a right position in order to have or be influenced by other males who are doing the right thing. Those individuals, such as coaches, those individuals such as yourself, Brother Campbell, that are leading mentor programs, or other people in the community, preachers and other individuals that can be emulated, and that they can see and actually see how to be a man. Because you can't learn how to be a man unless you are seeing somebody actually doing what's required to be a man. All those qualities that we just talked about. And so it really takes communicating to that woman, you can do it, but you need some help.
Well, from my point of view, I don't think there's the exact science. I figure the more that we expose our young men and young ladies to, the greater probability of you'll have of success. I am not advocating that everybody goes here, but to be a productive citizen, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the ministry, whether it's consulting, that's the goal. And I think a lot of times when kids, particularly young men, have a lot of idle time, it breeds all kinds of other things, and they look for things to do. So I was always immersed, whether it was school, boys club, Optimist. I was so busy that once I came home and got my homework, it was time to go to sleep, basically. So there wasn't a lot of time to run the street, or after school, I was coming home and getting in mischief. There was somewhere I had to be every day after school. And I think those programs within our community are lacking, whether it's the arts, right? It could be sports. I mean, you name it. There was dance troops. We had martial arts. We had football, of course, and basketball and baseball and all those things. And then you have folks going to the African American Cultural Arts Center doing drama, singing, being a part of the high school band. Ruben can attest to that, going to Carol City when bands were big. Miami Central, bands were big. Jackson, bands. People came to a football game to see the halftime show. But you got to think, all of those kids in the band playing the instrument after school had something to do, even on Friday night. We got to keep our kids involved with rich activities that forces their brains to really think and works with both the left side and the right side of their brain.
If I can, I want to jump in. I know, but I got to say this, and I want to say this, and I might step on some toes, but I hopefully I won't. That woman is probably one of the single most influential people in the child's life. That's the first thing I want to say to every mother. You probably have more influence over your child than anyone else. So it's a known, common saying in our community that the mothers, raise their daughters and they love their sons. So the sons don't always learn the responsibilities. The mothers always, covering for the son. And that affects some relationships, because the father wants to, shape him to be a man of honor, be a man of excellence. And mom's like, okay, you're being too hard on him. So we one of the things that the mother has to do is understand her role and her influence in that child's life, because she's very powerful. The other thing is, as a couple, even if you're not together, but if you're parents, you got to work together. You got to find, I don't care what happened, who shot John, all the scuttlebutt or whatever that happened in the past. If you're raising that life, you got to work together. You got to come to some common ground. I can't have my son on restriction in my house, and then he goes to your house and he can do whatever he wants to do. If we're on the same page about that. The other thing is, be careful about the men you bring around your son. So if you out there and you partying and you're dealing with some folks that doing some unscrupulous things, don't bring that home. I can't be the moral compass for you and tell you not to do it. But what I'm going to say is, don't bring that around your children, because your children see that. And if mama likes that, then that boy's going to say, well, that's what I need to do. This is the kind of man I need to be. And so even though she may not be able to raise him and give him the male's perspective, what she does is, a lot of times, this powerful woman brings in some influences into that system, you see. And that influence is something that really, really shapes the mind of that young man. The other thing, the last thing, this is the controversial part. And I know it's hard, single women, you're out there, you're dating. The worst thing your son, your child would ever want to see, and I know this from counseling, is see you dating multiple people. And I know people are like, well, who are you to say this, right? But seriously, what that does is that shapes your son's mind of a view of a woman. And every time he sees you getting hurt, or every time he sees someone taking advantage, that shapes his mind about how to deal with women. So again, for that strong woman who's going to be the most influential, and when I say strong, I'm talking about every woman, you're going to be the most influential person in your children's life, male or female. Understand, you have the power and control about who you bring them around, who you allow them to be with. You have the control and power to say, listen, even though my ex and I don't get along, we're gonna work together when it comes down to raising this child the right way, because we want what's best for our child. That mother, daddy will let you go to jail. That mother will keep you out of jail. And those same mothers that keep you out of jail, right? A lot of times they protect their kids in very violent situations. And so sometimes you have to be mindful of that. Are you really protecting him? Or is it something that's going to happen that's going to be so harsh that he won't be able, to overcome this? So think about it. Every time I think about a shooting, that person, that teenager that shot someone has a place to go. Somebody in his family, 9 times out of 10, knows what he's done.
Yeah.
And they have a choice of, giving them that tough love, or they have a choice of allowing it to perpetuate. Because once that kid gets into that system like that, he has no respect for anyone, even the person that protects him. He will bow up at them. He will get in their face. This is one of the reasons why it's so very important to have structure. This is why a lot of men, because they know, you need structure. So this is why a lot of men you see take that hard way of dealing with it, because they know if you let him grow up without structure, once he turns from 0 to 10, once he gets 14, 15, a little hair on his chest, you can't bring structure into that situation now. You're dealing with a whole different situation. So again, finally, for that woman who's the most one of the most influential people in children's life. Be mindful of who you surround yourself with. Be mindful of what company you keep, what company you introduce your children to, and make sure if the father is one who's doing the right thing, who's trying to do the right thing, work with that father. Not saying to work with somebody who ain't doing right, but work with the ones that are trying to do the right thing with the kid. He may not have money, may not have resources, but allow him to spend time if you know he's going to put that child in a positive situation or give him the positive direction and guidance. Don't allow money to be a factor in his involvement in the child's life.
I definitely appreciate those comments. Any other thing you want to add? Anything? And I just want to remind our audience, don't forget, at any time, you can write your questions in the chat here if you're here on Zoom. I'm also looking at Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions for our panel tonight, feel free to leave them there. And we'll, in about 5 minutes, we'll go into our Q&A session. Gentlemen, I found a quote today that I thought was pretty interesting. The quote says, if we stop treating manhood as something shameful, we might end up with fewer men we're ashamed of. Let me say it again. If we stop treating manhood as something shameful, we might end up with fewer men we're ashamed of. And that made me think about the question is, do you believe that manhood today is under attack? You know, I hear people talk about toxic masculinity and, you know, the patriarchal society and so on and so forth. And I think maybe boys, males, men can get mixed messages about, you know, being a man or manhood itself. But do you think manhood is under attack today? And Pierre, you can start. You're usually in the middle. We'll let you start this one.
No problem. I think, let me be clear. Yes, because of the commercialization and the visuals that we see. I'm not going to be specific, but there is a drug commercial on that deals with HIV and AIDS, right? And at the end, what you see in the visual are two men being affectionate with each other. Us growing up, we're not judge nor jury, and I'm not saying that this didn't happen when we were growing up, but we weren't exposed to those most of us were not exposed to those kind of visuals. There were certain things that were just taboo. Now we're in a culture where everything is front and center. I mean, you see some of the stuff. I was looking at Monique on social media the other day, and she talked about how she was taught, and we were probably taught, when you came out of your house, you represented something. So you dressed the part. Now, you didn't have to have on a suit or anything like that, but you certainly were not in Walmart with your pajamas on, some slippers, and a bonnet. Okay? Or a scarf. Because they would tell us, when you leave here, you act like you represent something. So I think a lot of things we've allowed to just evolve and just say, well, generations are differently, have changed a lot and gives us these visuals. But I still say that the core principles of being a man, right, that we've talked about here earlier, are all the same. It's the same common denominator. Now, what we do with them in that proverbial fork in the road that Ruben talks about is a choice. We can either do what we've been taught and do what's right, and we know it's right, or we can acquiesce and we can go the other direction. But I just think the media gives us visuals that are not, in my opinion, healthy, right? No judgment on anyone. But I just think some things, everything is not for public view and consumption. Okay.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I'll jump in. So three questions. Three questions that I would throw out to answer your question. is what do we see in the media? Mr. Rutledge just talked about that. What do we see statistically in our society? And what do we see politically? And if you answer all of those three questions in the correct manner, you would have to come to one conclusion. Yes, manhood is under attack. You know, we look at the politics and you see legalization of marriage between a man and a man. Statistically, you look at what's happening in households. You know, it was talked about that, you know, we really shouldn't criticize, or not criticize, but it's nothing new to have a single woman-led household. Statistically, over the last 40 years or 50 years, there's a big difference. In the 60s, in African-American households, divorce was not as prevalent as it is now. And in any other group, statistically, divorce and single women-led households were not as prevalent as they are now. So the statistics show that. And then from the media, it's all out there. You know, do what you feel like, act like what you feel like. It don't matter what is right, because what's right is not accepted anymore in our culture. So yeah, manhood is under attack.
All right, if I may, I want to really shed some light on some things that I think is very important. When you talk about manhood being under attack, you got to think about it from a historic perspective, 1619. And not only is manhood under attack, but the Black family has been under attack. We were brought over as slaves. When we started families, we were separated from our families. You know, they would move you, the male, if he's a big buck, from one plantation to another so he can sire some more children from another, you know, healthy female. So he has children all over the place. So this is psychological conditioning. I want you to understand this. So when you see that man saying he got his team, he got these women, he got these strange women, it's all psychological thing that played out and was really, you know, ingrained in us over time, over years, hundreds of years. And even after slavery and Jim Crow, when it came down, when they started having public assistance, you know, you couldn't be a married couple together in some places and living in the same house. So a man got his family here and he got to live someplace else, you know, and then he ends up with another family and ends up doing some other stuff. It's about that social conditioning that happens to us. We are on, we just did a remembrance of Black Wall Street. So I'm gonna tell you one of the other things that really, when you talk about let's say Black men being under attack. One of my greatest fears, and I work with police departments, I work with, you know, public entities. One of my greatest fears, not being able to protect my son if he was violated by a man with a badge and a gun. When you talk about manhood, you're talking about something that emasculates you as a man. You saw the young man on TV this weekend talking about, y'all killed my baby. He was a good kid. You know, when you are a man and and Pierre talked about it, you know, being a protector, provider, and you can't protect or provide for your family. And some of that is done strategically. A lot of Black men are underemployed. You may have the credentials, but you can't get the proper jobs because You know, somebody else wants the job or they speak a certain language or whatever, and you can't thrive in the way that you should. You've done everything that you were supposed to do. They told you to go to school, get your degree. You get your degree. You want and got your, you know, got your higher level degree. And then you're getting paid, you know, change compared to someone of a different ethnicity or religious belief than you for doing the same job. Same thing with our women. But for a man, that's emasculating. When your kid goes into the store and you got just enough to get whatever that meat was that you were planning on buying for dinner or whatever, you got just enough, and that kid looks at you and, you know, bat them eyes, especially if it's a little girl or daughter or something like that, and she's like, Daddy, I want this doll, and you can't get it for her. That's under attack. When your kids grow up and they don't have to worry about what they're going to eat, where they're going to live, whether the lights are going to be on and off, if you're able to do that and you've never experienced any of those hardships, and the reason why you experienced them is because of the color of your skin and because you were this Black male, you know, that is emasculating to Black men. And mind you, Wall Street, just like Wall Street, we had Overtown, a colored town that they had back then. All of the Black hotels there, the Dorseys. You had Coconut Grove. Y'all had them in Pompano too. You had places where Black names rang out all throughout the state. Rosewood, Edenville, where we've had our similar Black Wall Streets, maybe not to the extent that they did, but the systematic destruction of communities so that dollar does not circulate 5 or 6 times, and then we have the financial empowerment. Things are done strategically, 95 coming through the way that it did, strategically to break down that family, that Black man who could do much more if he was working and living in a community where his dollar circulated and so on and so forth. So when we talk about that, we've been under constant attack, to answer your question, since they brought us over here, man. We've been under constant attack. We are one, and this is the thing I want to leave on. I don't want to leave on doom and gloom.
Yeah.
I want to leave on this. We are one of the most resilient people in the world to endure all that we have endured.
And thrive.
So, yeah, that's what I want to leave on. After all of that, we still survive. You see? And that's what I want to, that's what our kids need to know. Even don't mind what you see, the little hardships or whatever, we are enduring, we are surviving, we're living in spite of. And to me, that's what's most important.
All right. And that leads me to the last, I think maybe the last question I'm going to ask is, how can we, or what can we do now? What can we do to empower boys and men to be better men, to be great men? How can we turn the tide? And I just want to leave it at that. What can we do as a community, as men, to really make a difference in the next generation of men to come, or even now?
Well, let me start off by saying, I believe it starts with economic empowerment. So when you look at other communities and you understand that they have a single language, they have a single culture, and their dollars are spent in their communities. When you look at our culture, because of some of the things that Ruben just mentioned, systemic racism, we don't have that same level of prevalence of economic empowerment. And so I think one of the dynamics that would help to change our position in society is to create those situations. Now, I'm not using my preacher hat in this case. I'm bivocational. I'm a director of finance for a municipality. So I'm using that hat in this discussion. I think a lot of it requires us to have economic empowerment, and we need to own more businesses. We need to take that economic empowerment and leverage it to create other organizations that can then to create synergy and then build momentum to help develop our Black men and our boys. Because without that empowerment and without those systems in place, it's hard enough to sustain what we got. But we need to build, and we need to build businesses and economic empowerment in order to create the structure we need and the ability to turn dollars over and over in our own community and to build organizations that help us to develop and give opportunity. See, one of the challenges that I see in our society is our young people just having the opportunity to get a job that helps to advance them to become productive citizens. You look at what's happened over the last year with the pandemic. In April of last year, 23% of our society, our nation, was unemployed. And we're having difficulties even right now trying to get people to go back to work. If we had businesses in place in our own community where we could hire our own people and motivate them and give them the training that they need to excel and grow, we could empower ourselves and wouldn't have to be looking for a handout from somebody else. We could do it ourselves. And so I think a large part of what we have to do deals with economic empowerment. And I'll leave it there.
Well, Brian, I think you posed $1 million question. And if any of us had the answer, we wouldn't be here today discussing this. Right? I think that the scales have somehow become unbalanced. We need to have less talking and more action. We all know, and Ashley hit on it, and Ruben lives it every day. And Brian, you know what the answers are. We know what some of the solutions are. The problem is having the ability and the access to really effectuate change, whether it's from an economic standpoint, whether it's from a political standpoint, whether it's from a civil rights standpoint. Somehow or another, we're missing the boat. What I find different here than most major urban cities, South Florida, is the majority of us either work for a governmental entity or are directly affected by a governmental entity. In other parts of the country that you go to where African-American men and women are flourishing, that entrepreneurial spirit drives the economic engine and not government. Another thing that I think that it actually hit on it, we're in a melting pot, and that could be good, that could be bad. Our Hispanic brothers and sisters will never let you get involved in their tradition. They're gonna have Noche Bueno, or whatever. They're gonna have all of that. They're gonna keep their tradition. Ruben will tell you he's from Bahamian descent. I will tell you the same. Then you have, Ashley may say, well, we're from Alabama. Oh, we're from Georgia. Oh, we're from North Florida. Because as it was said earlier, when we were brought here, as Ruben said, we were dispersed everywhere. Now, I want to show my level of, I'm not going to say ignorance, but of not being exposed to it. Last night when I watched Dreamland, nowhere in my K through 12 and beyond had I ever been told about the 1929 of whatever year it was, Tulsa massacre, was never discussed.
Never.
So if you got 99 degrees and it was never discussed, if you grew up in an urban city and it was never discussed, it's baffling. And I took African American studies in college and African American history. It wasn't discussed. But it really opened your eyes to see two things: the possibilities that we had as people, and it was the same thing here in Overtown when my mother grew up. All right. The possibilities that we had, that we were owning our own things. Why? Because the doctors lived in our communities. Just like Tulsa, the surgeon lived in our community. The hotel owner lived in our community. The teacher lived in our community. The principal of the high school lived in our community. So therefore, that was that synergy that we all depended on one another. We've gotten dispersed now. You know, you got folks, I live over here, I live there. But at the end of the day, where's the tradition? What do we celebrate? Wait. What do we celebrate that all four of us celebrate? You're going to tell me Juneteenth. We didn't start studying that till a few years ago. 1997 is when the Tulsa issue was brought to the forefront in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You mean to tell me that people grew up and never really talked about it? Why? Okay. You're going to tell me Martin Luther King Day. One day come on. What do we celebrate? Okay. You have Boxing Day in the Bahamas. Ruben knows that everybody goes to that. I don't care if you Bahamian, you running there. What do we all celebrate? I don't care if you're from Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, New York, the Bahamas, Haiti, the Dominican Republic. It doesn't matter. Where do we come together and there's synergy? And until we get that, we're going to be doing more talking and less action. We know what the answers are. We know what the problems are, definitely. How do we resolve it? Is the question.
Brought up some very pivotal points, Pierre and Brother Ashley. But I'm going to leave y'all with this. If we resign ourselves to be educated by our oppressor or the colonizer, we're destined to fail.
Yeah.
I have Jewish friends. All of the Jewish kids, to learn their history, their real history, they go to class on Saturday. We don't need a public school system to teach us about our history. We have the information. So that's something that we need to be working on as a people, where we use our churches as educational centers, not only to teach the word, but also to teach the history. So the history will never be lost. See, traditionally, we are the oral tradition. All of our stories were not written down. You know, we don't have the ancient hieroglyphics and stuff like that. They were passed down under the tree through oral tradition. People would tell, you know, what went on, no matter where you are from the diaspora. You know, that's how we do it. But one thing we cannot do is we cannot depend on the colonizer to give us the real education. They're going to give you his story, not history, but his story. And that's what our kids are going to learn. They're going to learn the real deal from us. My child, I taught my child the real deal. I didn't wait for Dade County Public Schools to teach it to him. You know, I taught him so that he knew, exposed him. And that's what we have to do as parents. And the other thing about cooperative economics. So one of the challenges we have, and this is something that we got to talk about as men. So we know that a few of us are let in. You actually say you work with the municipality, so you know you got a couple of people that got the DBEs and folks who can get some contracts. And it's true, Black people hire Black people at a higher rate than any other group of people, right? Problem is, when we get some information about opportunities and how to advance, we have not effectively been able to share that information with people who can grow our network. If you look at what the Hispanics came when in the 70s, and Pierre can tell you his godfather in the school system, Mr. Solomon Stinson, done wonders for the schools, more Black educators ever because of that man right there, and administrators in Dade County Public Schools. He did the right thing. He made sure that we got Black administrators, we got Black people employed by the school system. And then we had this influx of Cubans. Something happened with us where we stopped doing what Dr. Stinson was doing. And then they started doing what Dr. Stinson was doing, right? And it was a wrap. It was a wrap because we had more county employees that were Black. We had more school employees that were Black and in administrative positions. We had more. And then all of a sudden, something happened and there became this distrust or envy or whatever it was. And we stopped working and organizing cooperatively to do this. I asked a friend of mine who is of Arabic descent. Her family owns a store in our neighborhood. And I noticed that on the store it was number 5. So they had this name and it was number 5. I said, so are there 4 other stores? She says, no, there's a lot more stores. She says, yeah, we're all in your neighborhood. And she says, you know what? I said, what? You guys have a gold mine that don't even realize it. She says, listen, when we buy our goods, we pool our money together. So if a box of M&M costs us $10, we're paying $5 for it. And we're making 200 and 300% profit on what we would have made if we had purchased it on our own as an individual. So when you see that number 5, that's a sign that tells people, okay, this many boxes go to number 5 store, this many boxes go to the other store. But they work cooperatively and they sell to people in the neighborhood that look like us who are impoverished, but we're feeding them and they're benefiting. Their children are going off to college, don't have to pay for financial aid. They're driving cars at 16, they get a brand new car, whatever, off of the dollars that we invest in them, right? But we have to find a way to get back to where it was when we were so-called segregated, because that's when our dollars stayed in our community. That's when we had real wealth, where people could amass wealth. D.A. Dorsey lent money to Mr. Burdines, who owned Burdines, the Burdines department store, a Black man. You understand? So that's how powerful the economic dollar was then. And we have to learn. I don't vilify any other group. I just say that we need to relearn and do what we know we need to. That's what happened in Tulsa. Yeah. Their professional services, everything that they need, from laundry, from whatever it is that they needed, medical, whatever it is that they needed, they had it right. They didn't have to go outside of their community. And not only did they get it, but they got top quality service. Because in order for you to survive, you had to do a good job. You couldn't just go out there and say, hey, I'm Black, do business with me. Because you had other Black people out there doing the same thing you're doing. So for you to survive as a business person, you had to provide a quality service or product. So that's what I want to leave you with. Don't depend on the colonizers for anything. Learn and make sure that we work cooperatively together.
Yeah.
And that's how we can make a difference.
And gentlemen, I think I said that was going to be the last one. But I got one last thing. We've gone over time, actually. But Pierre, you mentioned something earlier about grabbing that young man and saying, you know, I love you. I want you guys to just imagine yourself with that young man right now who is feeling discouraged, frustrated, angry, because to him, in his eyes, his prospects are dim. What would you say to that young man? What's one thing? Just give me one thing that you would say to that young man uh, to encourage him to keep on keeping on. And I'll let Leo, I don't know which one to call on now. Let's start with Ruben. Ruben, you ended us the last one, so I'm gonna let you start this one.
So the one thing I could say, something my father told me and uncles and everything else, he says, listen, son, no matter how hard life gets, you've never been in a situation, I've never been in a situation that I've never been able to get out of. So just understand things happens in seasons and time, and your time is coming. Just be patient, do the right thing. Your time will come.
All right. All right. Brother Hepburn, you want to take it?
Sure. I'm gonna go back to one of the things that my father always told me. He said, you always have to work harder than everybody else. And so maybe it's not going to come to you in this opportunity, but keep working hard. Eventually, you will get where you need to be. And always remember, you got to work harder than everybody else. Just because of, I'm gonna just say it, just because of the color of your skin, you got to work harder than everybody else. And that's something that I always remember my dad telling me. And when I went into the environment where I was working with people from other ethnic groups, I remember that. And it always pushed me to be motivated, no matter who I was dealing with, no matter what I was facing, that my hard work is going to end up with a good result, whether it's here or somewhere else.
Thank you. All right, Pierre, close it out.
I would say to them, as it was always said to me, the sky's the limit. Life is a series of peaks and valleys. You're gonna fall, but when you fall, what really matters is what you do when you get back up. Never, ever, ever give up.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank each one of you for getting us started in this series of conversations. I appreciate your wisdom, your insight, the information, all that you have shared with us tonight. And I want to encourage those of you who are watching, whether it's here on Zoom or on the social media, we're going to continue this series every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. In the same platform that you're watching now. Next week, we're going to be talking about men and mental health. And that's an important topic for us to have a conversation about, especially in this day and age. It's so important that men take care of themselves mentally because of so many things that we have to endure. And so I want to encourage everyone to join us next Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. as we talk about men and mental health. Gentlemen, again, job well done. Thank you so much. We're off to a great start. Appreciate you guys. And thank you so much. Y'all have a great night. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, family.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.